Hey Ratbags, it's Jade. Today giving you a lowdown on another update that's gone live on the PTB, the public test branch of VALHEIM, which is definitely going to be music to people's ears if they think that the Ashlands is still too hard. There's a huge amount of nerfs and buffs, so let's go through what is relatively short, but definitely absolutely massive in terms of what it is buffing. So they've decreased the random spawn chance of multiple enemies in the Ashlands. Vultures, they've reduced the spawn chance from 30% to 20%. Twitchers, in the day, their spawn interval has increased from 110 to 200. Reduced spawn chances from 55 to 25%. Max spawn decreased from 4 to 3. That is a pretty hefty jump. I'm going to talk about the process of this afterwards and why it can be so big before anyone starts crying, oh, didn't they test this? Didn't they balance this? Because I think there's definitely some answers there. And it might not really be to do with the devs, more about the player base that take part in the test branches. Twitchers, night, spawn interval increased from 100 to 160, spawn chance reduced from 60 to 30%, max spawn decreased from 5 to 4. Charred archer, spawn interval increased from 240 to 320, reduced spawn chance from 40 to 20. Charred melee, spawn interval increased from 240 to 320, reduced spawn chance from 50 to 20%. Lava blob, spawn interval increased from 200 to 260. Flametal spires will no longer submerge when mined. Vultures no longer make walking sounds when flying. Fix the bug in the block list that made it possible to block yourself. Now there are a few fixes as well for Xbox, and did you know, well, I don't think it's really big news, but I'm guessing there might be some Mac players who have just picked up VALHEIM. It did launch on Mac a week ago or so. Fix the bug that made the game think that every player on the list was the local player. This bug was the root cause of multiple issues since privilege checks became completely broken. This impacted managing a player communication, display name and gamer pick, and maintaining multiplayer session state. So that is all on the Xbox. That has now been fixed. Fix the bug concerning joinable game sessions and online play. Fixing the error on Xbox One caused by mouse.current returning null if no mouse is plugged in. And then on Mac, as I said, there's a few fixes as well, which I'm not going to go through because let's face it, who's playing it on Mac? So, two things here. These obviously won't be going live for everyone. This is just a public test. You have to opt into it on Steam or download the VALHEIM Xbox Insider app or the Xbox Insider app and play VALHEIM from there. So if you're wondering why it's still too challenging, make sure you check the dates and I'll give an update once this update goes live for everyone. And two, let's talk about some of these balance changes. These are pretty drastic and huge. And definitely I can see why some people will be questioning how this got missed or why it's such a massive increase or basically buff or nerf if you're obviously the enemy's point of view. All the mobs pretty much will now have longer before they spawn again, which is one of the big criticisms. People have got no problem with the enemies hitting hard or being tough to fight or beat, but its sheer volume and frequency means you never really get a second's rest to just enjoy the actual biome, set up a base or just really progress unless you are like one of the best players going. And yes, you can always make the game easier in settings, but let's face it, this is the base default game. It has to be approachable. I do think some of these actual reductions seem quite large, and I'm someone that complained a lot about VALHEIM Ashlands. But then I remember on the Steam and description it does label VALHEIM as a brutal game. But I do recognise they probably were needed. I ain't gonna lie, I did kind of end up feeling like I just didn't want to put myself through the pain of playing anymore until I'd had a little break and come back to it refreshed. I live streamed a bunch of times and I got my arse handed to me playing on default settings. And again, I know I can make it easier, but I wanted to see how it would be for a solo player. So I'm definitely pleased to see some of them reductions. I do worry they might be a bit too much. It is hard juggling that balance between making the game approachable and making the game just really obviously hard. I didn't really have a problem with the amount of enemies that would spawn occasionally, so reducing that has obviously made it a bit easier too. And things like the lava blob, I don't think they were overspawning in my opinion. The big one there though, the Flametal spires no longer submerging, I kind of feel that's a mistake. The devs obviously had a vision for VALHEIM and Ashlands, and they've taken on board feedback like they have in the past, which is great to see. They obviously know what they want to do with their game, and that's the way it should go because it's their game. But they do take on board feedback for sure. With the Flametal spires submerging, I thought that was a pretty unique mechanic and it saved it from just being kind of boring, oh look, there you go, there's a Flametal ore, mine it, job done. It did add an element of danger and something you had to think about and making sure that you had obviously the platform bombs so you could get to places and then get off. I think they should probably make this an option in the server settings for people who are really hardcore and want it, or maybe just see how feedback goes in this beta branch. Bottom line though, I'm pretty sure with the lots of the reviews, maybe people just complain too much that they're sick of their metal dropping. It might be a case that they're not able to get enough, and there might not be enough of the spawns on the actual maps. By now people are well into playing it, so it'd be too late to just say, hey, we're going to up the amount of spawns that you'll get, because people will have to choose brand new maps maybe to go and experience that. But yeah, I feel like it's taken away their original vision a little bit if the metal spires no longer submerge. If you're watching, and I know you guys do, I love you, but why don't you make it a chance that they might drop? 50%, whatever it is. I don't know if that's doable in the code, but I think that would be a happy compromise, and it keeps part of your original vision there. But the rest of the stuff, yeah, there's no doubt about it. VALHEIM has received a bit of a pasting in terms of recent reviews. It was sitting around the 90-91% score, and it's dropped by about 5 or 6 points in the last 30 days. So clearly a good proportion of people feel like it was too hard. So this is where I'm going to have a little bit of a whinge about the public test. And this isn't to do with Irongate, it's not their fault, and it's not really the players' fault. Irongate do some great work with their public test branches. Not every survival game does it. Some of the biggest, like Ark, have never really utilised them properly. They give the opportunity for us to test it and get that feedback. What I think happens now though is that it's so filled with just the hardcore players, especially on PC where it's easily more accessible, that a lot of the feedback the devs get initially is pretty much saying, no, this is fine, I can take it. I don't mind millions of enemies spawning because I'm a Chad. And by the time it rolls out to everyone and more casual players and people on Xbox, then you're going to have these problems where people are like, what the FUD? Who tested this? This is super hard. I can't actually progress anywhere. And this is a problem all public test branches tend to have. People also race to go and play new content like me. But what I feel should happen is more people should do reviews on the public test and really get involved in the feedback aspect. Now I give my feedback direct to the devs occasionally, and obviously I do it by my videos. But I think more people need to do it. Maybe it could be something that Irongate roll out as well. Maybe more opinion polls, or maybe more kind of surveys while the public test is going to get some of that feedback. It might not eliminate all the Chads being basically still too good at the game, but at least it could be something to try and gauge a bit more wider impact. The other thing is as well on Xbox, on the Insider Hub, again, it's another app that people have to download, and sometimes people worry they're going to lose their progress because the progress actually carries over on both. If it didn't, I think people would never play it because they wouldn't want to have to start with a new character every time, so it needs to be that way. And maybe Irongate needs to advertise more, again, that it's on the Xbox Insider Hub. I mean, they're doing all they can. They mention that there's forms to fill out on the PTB patch notes. They do mention on their website that you can download the Xbox Insider Hub, but I still feel like more needs to maybe be done. It might be a bit of a moot point. We've only got one maybe massive update in terms of huge biome changes in the future now before 1.0, and there's no guarantee that'll ever be in the PTB. But something to bear in mind for future games or whatever they decide to do with VALHEIM once it hits 1.0. And I'm sure they're going to be having some smaller updates between now and probably the end of 2025 when obviously the Deep North maybe launches. That's my estimation. It might be sooner, it might be later, but given what we've had before. So, no one's real fault. VALHEIM and Irongate do their best, but they can only work with the feedback that they get. I can guarantee right now when the public test version was going, the Steam reviews were not dropping that much. I think it pretty much was the same throughout that 2-week period, because people were obviously making sure that it was going to be the final before giving a review. And actually it was more than 2 weeks, I think it was like 3. Again, something VALHEIM do really well at, giving plenty of time for people to try it. They will bounce back. 84% isn't a terrible score, and all-time reviews are still one of the best reviewed survival games on Steam. 94% is higher than pretty much any other, bar maybe games like The Forest and Terraria. So put things in context, this is what the review system's for. But yeah, I do think it's a mixture of players not always given enough feedback. Some of the feedback only really been gotten from some of the toughest people that play VALHEIM. The devs will probably be on holiday soon. They go away for their like cultural yearly kind of window where a lot of Swedes have their holidays. So I reckon this will probably come out either just before or maybe just afterwards. So it could be a while that this is in public test branch. We'll have to wait and see. But given the reviews, I reckon they'll probably push it out a lot sooner. And that's it. I will be back for Valheim. Like I said, just because I was having a hard time doesn't mean everyone else is. I totally get that lots of players will just enjoying the experience, and playing in groups might be a bit easier. But yeah, it did kind of just in the end wear me down, dying every 2 seconds. Losing your skills is probably one of the worst things that can happen to you when you're in Ashlands. And having to go back pretty much and rebuild yourself to take it on again is something that I think a lot of players struggle with. So if you're still having problems, keep checking your skills, maybe turn off the actual setting in the menus so that you don't lose as much. And fingers crossed, we will all conquer Ashlands properly and legit. Until next time, ratbags, laters.